Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music. And today we are back at the Barbershop, Archie Edwards Blues Heritage Foundation headquarters in Riverdale, Maryland. And I have the great pleasure to be able to talk today with a good friend of mine, great harmonica player, and also come to find out kind of a devotee of the music lesson by Victor Wooten as well. So maybe we can get into that too. Mr. Geoffrey Seals. Jeff, how you doing?
Pretty good, Jefferson. How are you?
Great. Thanks so much for agreeing to do this and take some time and share a few thoughts about music and that sort of thing.
My pleasure.
So you're one of, I think, many people who, I'm not sure whether I really met you at Blues Week or the Barbershop or both, or maybe it was a chicken and the egg and it doesn't matter, but you've been going to Blues Week for a while. You're instructing there now in harmonica.
Yes.
And been coming to the Barbershop for quite some years, I suppose.
Well, yes. Let's see now. It'll be 10 years, or it has been 10 years, actually, as of February.
Wow. So your 10-year anniversary is like half of the Barbershop's anniversary. You've been coming for half the time, because the Barbershop's got its big 20th year anniversary coming up in the fall, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. We're really excited about that event that's coming up, the 20th anniversary of the Barbershop. We're going to have several events on Friday night and Saturday night. And Friday night will be a rare Friday night jam session. And then Saturday we'll have our regular jam session and then a concert and then a after party, if you will, back here at the Barbershop after the concert. So
it's October 20 weekend, I think.
It is. Yes, sure. But you made reference to when we first met. And I started thinking about that. And to my recollection, I believe we first met at Donna Fletcher's annual party.
Oh, yeah. Well, that certainly could be. I've been going to those parties for a long time. She opens up her house, and it's a great set of jams.
Sure.
Beautiful music night. Well, tell me a little bit about how music came into your life. Were you in a musical family? Did your mother play harmonica? Did they listen to music? Did you take lessons? Did you play another instrument, or did you just kind of come to harmonica later in life? Or what do you remember?
Wow. Well, earliest instances of music, I guess. First off, we aren't. My immediate family wasn't very musical when I was growing up. I can say that. Although my grandfather taught piano. And for a period of time, he was a musical director for the church choir. He was the associate pastor at the church that we attended for a period of time. But my earliest recollections of music in general are like everyone else when you go to grade school and you learn the different songs. And so I learned a lot of songs when I was younger. But growing up, I was struck by the harmonica as a youngster. And that was just because my older cousins, who very often babysat us, they were teens in the 60s, so they were listening to a lot of the, blues and soul music of the 60s and 70s. And so I heard a lot of that music. And so that was an influence on me. And I was really struck by the harmonica whenever I heard it. And then as I got older, and I wanted to get a harmonica, and I asked my father about that, and he just said no harmonica.
Wow!
And I never realized that they were readily available. It never occurred to me.
You could have snuck one into the house. You never would have known.
Exactly. And so when I got in high school, like 14, 15, and I attempted to play the trumpet for a short period of time, and then I gave up on that. But right after graduating from high school, I stumbled across a store and there was a harmonica, and I was ecstatic. I was like, "Hey, harmonicas," And so I immediately grabbed one, and started playing it and taught myself different folk tunes or fireside tunes and that sort of thing. And it's funny when that just brought to mind a memory growing up. We had a book of folk tunes. There were probably over, I want to say close to 200 songs in there. And I would, from time to time, take that book out as I was growing up and just learn the different songs, from the lyrics and the ones that I knew and kind of sing along with those. So when I did get a harmonica, it was just a natural for me to start playing those songs that I had been learning the lyrics from in that book. And so that was my first beginnings with the harmonica. And so I quickly realized that I didn't know how to read music. And so I took out a notepad and I literally wrote out my own version of a harmonica tab and taught to learn those songs, And after I accomplished that, then I really wanted to play Stevie Wonder songs, if you will. And very quickly found out that wasn't happening. I didn't know it at the time, but I needed different key harmonicas.
I hear you.
And
been there.
Sure. So there were times my early 20s when the harmonica probably spent much more time in a top drawer than it did with me playing it. When people ask me how many years have I been playing, I always ask them in human years or dog years.
That's funny. So your instrument has been harmonica from fairly young. Oh
yeah, sure. I would say from 81 on, if not 1980.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like 30 years.
Yes. But I really bore in on it, I want to say in the 90s, and I'm kind of a little bit lost exactly when. But what occurred was Buffalo had this old, wonderful music store. And you could go in there and just find any type of sheet music. And everybody knew about it, And so I went in there one day and asked the guy at the counter for sheet music for harmonica.
I wonder what kind of look you got from him.
He laughed right in my face. I mean, the guy, he was a good belly laugh too, And, I kind of felt bad, but I understood. And then after he finished laughing, he says, why don't you take lessons? And I looked at him and I said, well, I would if I could. And so he gave me contact information for Rick Nicostra.
Oh, Rick.
Rick Nicostra, yes. Rick.
Good friend, Rick.
Buffalo Rick, right?
Yeah, you got all those harmonica dudes up there in Buffalo, the harmonica cats or whatever they are. Al and all them.
Yes, Al and Rick and oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the names now. Lori was one of them, but yeah, quite a contingent.
So you started taking lessons with Rick Nicotra.
Yes, Rick Nicotra. And
wow.
I'd go to his, he lived out in East Aurora, which was like, his house was 22 to 30 miles from my place. And so I'd drive out there once a week. And it was interesting. He had just retired from his vocation as a school teacher. And it was interesting. The very first time I met him for a lesson, I walk in and there's an older gentleman, with the gray hair and the beard, and he's got coveralls on. And I'm looking at him and I'm looking at Rick, and I'm like, what have I gotten myself into? And then I sit down and I look, and Rick has Lincoln logs sitting on the table. And I'm like, cool.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So he must have told you about Blues Week too.
He, I don't recall if he did or didn't at that point. I do know that we spent a lot of time just going over the fundamentals and well, you know what? Yes, he did. He did.
Because they have a contingent that, for years went down, 10 harmonica players from Buffalo or something.
Yes, sure.
So that's when you really started working on it, and then you found out about the barbershop somehow, and you've been, playing a lot. And have you taken more lessons or?
Well, so I took lessons from Rick, and what ended up happening was we had an opportunity to relocate to this area in late 2007, and so I was playing Chicago style predominantly at that point. So we came down here and, job searching and all those things. When you're getting settled, you come down to a new area. And I told my wife that I researched online about the different blues societies because I was a member of the Western New York Blues Society, and so I wanted to continue that down here. So I did a internet search, and the first thing that came up was a barbershop.
There you go.
Yeah.
The rest is history.
That's it. The rest is history. Sure. But so she told her I wanted to go, and she said, no. She said, no fun stuff until you get a job.
Ooh.
Yeah. So she was cracking
Dagger.
the whip. Oh yeah. Well, one of us somebody's got to be the rational one, and the other one's got to be the irrational one, I guess you could say. So I'm the flight of fancy person, and she's the voice of reason.
And you've been now teaching beginner harmonica at Augusta Heritage Center, Davis and Elkins College, Elkins, West Virginia, for several years, haven't you? Or maybe on and off? I'm not sure.
I think this is year number 3 for me at Blues Week. Yes, but I've been teaching. I was teaching here at the Barbershop for 2 years prior to beginning at Blues Week. Sure.
So, one of the things I think that we share is some of the Augusta moments.
Yes.
Just those magical times when the music in your soul pops out somehow, somewhere, and something happens. And I don't know if you've had many of those Augusta moments or any you can recall, but let me tie that into the music lesson, the book by Victor Wooten, because we haven't talked about that yet. But I'm interested, how that, almost that spiritual side of music, came to you, and when you read the music lesson, and how that kind of ties together. Just any thoughts on any of that?
Well, on the spiritual side of music, it's interesting that you experience it long before you understand it. And I think that's true of all of us, in that throughout our lifetime, we experience just the sheer joy of it and the euphoria that goes along with it without understanding why that is. But we just ride. I say ride the wave like someone who's surfing. You get up on top of it and you just kind of ride it as it lifts you.
Yeah, good analogy.
And you float along there, and it's a wonderful feeling. But yeah, I've had a few of those experiences at Augusta, where you're there with like-minded people, and you're just enjoying the music, and you aren't really thinking about it. It's the stream of consciousness as the notes just flow through you and through your instrument. And in terms of Victor Wooten, I read his book a little over a year ago, I would say. And
how did you find out about it, or what was it? Did somebody tell you, or did?
I read of it on social media, and then I went to a website for Barnes and Noble, and you read a little bit of a preface about the book, and I thought it was interesting and it intrigued me. So I went out and I purchased it, and I sat down and read right through it, and I thought it was very enlightening, to say the least. It made me reflect internally on what music is about, and my relationship with music, and how to share that relationship with others.
Wow, well, that's pretty profound. So, what is your relationship with music? I mean, how would you summarize the key points or points that you think he's trying to make, or that people should hear?
Well, I think that one of the biggest points that he made about music is that everyone can learn it. Everyone can learn to play music, and that you shouldn't allow yourself to be confined by a rote methodology of learning to play music or what music is. If you just pick up an instrument and experience the sounds that emanate from it, and just start to put those sounds together in a fashion that is appealing to you, that you will find your way. That's pretty much kind of what I don't want to say pretty much what I got from it, but it's one of the more interesting aspects that I took away from the book itself. He spent some time talking about how his brothers didn't tell him what notes to play. He said they really didn't even tell him how to finger, the frets on the guitar. They just gave him the instrument and said, "Here, make sounds with it." And that's very similar to what we experience with a harmonica. You're unable to see what you're doing. A guitarist can look down at their hands and look at another person's hands, and from that they can extrapolate what they should be doing. With a harmonica, even if you look right at someone who's playing it,
you don't know what's going on in there.
You sure don't. You sure don't. And I've been doing this for a number of years now, as we discussed, and I look at people, and if I look at them, I'm really getting nothing. But if I close my eyes or just focus on listening, I really get in tune with what they're doing.
Wow, that's really, really special. Certainly the book had a big effect on me. His thoughts about intention. At one point, Michael, the character in the book, says, "Intention is the key to everything." And I've thought about that a lot. And, learning to play music, I mean, you as you're just discussing it, can kind of flow through you and that sort of thing. But to really learn it takes time and practice and effort and intention. I mean, a lot of people just, and for me, I picked up guitar, took a few lessons when I was 20-something, and just didn't do it for 30 years, So has that book or your experiences at Augusta and with music sort of changed your outlook about things? I mean, it can be hard to be a musician, and it can be very frustrating because you can't always get where you want to go. But it sounds like this has given you some, reassurance. Perspective. It's
given me perspective. And what it's given me perspective on is life itself. In that there is an ebb and flow to everything that is around us. And music is a great symbolic representation of that ebb and flow. And as you go through and you learn music, and you go through the periods of ascension as you're gaining more skills or more competencies, and then what you'll find out is that you'll reach a plateau, and then you'll just stay on that plateau and for a very long time, and then all of a sudden there's another burst of ascension again, and you start to climb upwards again. And so that's where the patience comes in. You can't allow yourself to get despondent because you aren't progressing, or disappointed, or dejected. You just have to continue to do the things that you're doing, and one thing builds upon another. And life is the same way. Your experiences, they build upon one another, and then based on your prior experiences, you're able to extrapolate, your next moves as you go forward. And so that is the same thing with instruments. As you build your experiences, you start to make associations with notes and phrasing. And you mentioned intentions. What are your intentions? And so you learn new intentions as you're playing, new ways to be expressive. And that was another key aspect or point that I felt came out of Victor Wooten's book. You mentioned it as intention, I mentioned it as expressiveness. To me, they're very similar. When I listen to musicians play, and I listen to harmonica players specifically, sometimes it seems as if people are just, even though they're in a band and they get a solo, they're playing by themselves as opposed to playing with their fellow musicians. And so I think you have to, what's your intent? And you have to include the others. Music is inclusive.
Yeah, sure is. One thing I wanted to ask, you've been around music for quite some time now. You're regular at the barbershop, Blues Week, teaching.
Mm-hmm.
What have you observed in other people, how the power of music, how music affects them? And it might be some of your students. I mean, I know beginning harmonica, you're just trying to play a note.
Yes.
And it's such a mystery that for a lot of people, it's like, whoa, what is going on here? But you're teaching people. I mean, what have you seen in kind of in connection with the power of music through any of these things you've been doing?
Well, I think that the aha moment is a wonderful thing to experience and to assist others with experiencing that. And it happens at different levels depending on what it is you're looking to attain. But I enjoy that. You're teaching someone how to play, and they may be getting a little bit frustrated, and all of a sudden they're going, I understand, and they light up. One of my favorite stories that I like to tell is I was teaching here at the barbershop, and I always teach over a course of 4 months, and everything is progressive. And so this was the third class in the series, and so everyone had learned everything prior. We were building, and this gentleman stopped in, and he had just heard about it, and so he stopped in to check things out, and he explained to me that he played in church, and he says, look, he said, I know all the keys. He says, I understand how to play scales. He says, I know about the octaves. He says, I know about, the wailing notes and the transition notes. And he says, but I'm having a problem with the blues progression. He says, I'm wondering if you can help me with that. And so he had come in, while the class was in progress. And so I said, well, sir, if you just have a seat, and we're going to be taking a break here in about 20 minutes because it was a 2-hour-long session. I said, I'll spend some one-on-one time and see if we can figure something out. And it turned out that the lesson plan for that day was about the blues progression. Mm-hmm. And so we were going through and playing a song together as a group, and midway through the song, he just lit up. He says, I've got it. And he jumped to his feet and he raced out the room.
Oh, boy. Well, that's great. Yeah, those are aha moments. I mean, also, I think for non-harmonica players, they don't quite get how big of a deal being able to bend notes is. And mm-hmm. when you first learn to bend some notes, it's hard. There's it's a do-it-yourself thing with that.
That is, it's always a challenge. There are a couple mechanical techniques that I employ to kind of get people to have immediate success. And once they have immediate success, then of course they hanker for more. But the downfall of that is the more is very difficult. Mm-hmm. And it never seems to be the same techniques to evoke those bent notes out of students. I can have 10 students, and out of those 10, I'm going to use 3 or 4 different techniques to get them all mm-hmm. to bend notes. I mean, I can do one technique and get everybody to do a very simple bend on the one draw. Mm-hmm. But if after that, you really have to work with people to do that, and that's something that's always a challenge.
So, the Planetary Gig Society is really trying to be part of, instigate, catalyze, whatever, the conversation about mm-hmm. how we can use this power in music to, help make a better world, to help people's lives improve, to mm-hmm. help people gain in perspective. And the barbershop's a great example of, it's a very irregular gig, and we need more of those around the planet. But do you have thoughts about that? I mean, your music lesson, you've read that, you've been teaching.
Well, yes, music has a healing quality to it, and so for me, it is very therapeutic. I spend 20, 30 minutes a day just playing, just because it is. After the day, you want to unwind, and it's just a great way to go through kind of a restoration of your soul, or, just kind of get yourself recalibrated or reset once you get back home and shake off the doldrums or what have you, all of the heavy baggage from work. You just shake that off, and then it becomes a separator, and then you can go on with whatever you're going to do at home or what have you. And I think that's something that we should share with others, and others should have an opportunity to enjoy that. We all enjoy different types of music, but it all gives us that same benefit, that healing benefit. How to do that for others and if we could do that consistently for others, would be a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's one of the things I enjoy about the barbershop is that we do provide or facilitate that for others, by providing an environment where people can come and sit down and they can enjoy it as a spectator. They can enjoy it as a musician. And I really try to make it a stress-free experience for others, whether they are experienced musician, whether they are a long-time attendee, or if they're a newcomer. I try not to put any pressure on them to contribute. And I take that away from my early beginnings as a harmonica player with Rick. There was this wonderful establishment in Buffalo. It was called the Lafayette Tap Room, and it was part of a 1 block by 1 block hotel, if you will, Lafayette Hotel. It was a little shy of a block, but anyway. The entranceway for the Lafayette Tap Room was your old, turn of the century entrance where it was a setback, but there were 2 doors, one on the left and one at a right, and both were like at a 45-degree angle. And you go to the right to go to the Lafayette Tap Room. When you went to the left, it was an old luncheonette, I guess you would call it. It was in the Art Deco style, and when it closed, nobody had redone it, and it was like a time capsule. And it was wonderful. And so when we went to the Lafayette Tap Room, they would open up that old luncheonette, and we would go and sit in there and just do like a jam session, an acoustic jam session. And then they would have us sign up on the chalkboard to go play on the stage, for the amateur jam. And they would have to drag me out of that luncheonette kicking and screaming to go on stage. I would just stay in the jam session for hours, and never come out. But they said, look, we got to support the bar. It's part of why we're here. I said, look, I'll buy all the drinks they want. But they're like, nope, you got to play. So I would always play just once so that I would satisfy that requirement. But I would spend all my time in the jam room. And even then, if somebody came in who was a novice at harmonica, I would sit down with them and teach them, how to blow, how to draw, how to get notes out of the single notes, how to get chords out of it. It wasn't formal instruction by any means, like I'm doing now, but I was always mentoring others on the harmonica, even from the earliest times of after I was getting organized instruction from that point forward. Yeah.
Well, you're certainly, what you're pointing out, I think, is the very welcoming nature of the barbershop and what you've seen in music is, it really makes a difference to just reach out to help share this healing thing that we've got. So anyway, Geoff, I really appreciate your taking the time. Some very profound comments. Glad to be able to talk with you about this, and just we'll look forward to playing some more music together.
Thank you very much. I wish I had more time. This has been a pleasant chat. Most enjoyable. Keep up the good work. This is good stuff.
All right, great. Thanks, Geoffrey Seals, everybody. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians. resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.